What's up, Mystic Wonder fans? Welcome back, guys. Today's episode will be about Maharishi Vedic science. You're probably thinking, what is Vedic science? I've never heard of this. And it's a pretty unheard of science. But I think it's pretty brilliant, actually. So it's called Maharishi Vedic science because of the founder, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the bringer of transcendental meditation to the West. And here I am, actually, right now, at Maharishi International University. So I figured while I'm here, why not make a video about Maharishi Vedic science, which is what I'm getting my master's degree in right now. They've actually changed the name to Consciousness and Human Potential, but for many years it was called Vedic science. So that's the Maharishi part of Maharishi Vedic science. Vedic because it comes from the Vedic tradition of knowledge. Now, I should say that this is, in my opinion, a fully legitimate science. It is a systematic, empirical investigation of reality. It's just that it's broader than what modern science usually focuses on. Where modern science usually limits its search to external experience, objective public observations of the world. Maharishi Vedic science utilizes inner experience as well. Inner experience from states of meditation, states of inner knowing. Because these states of meditation, such as transcendental consciousness, are an inner knowledge, inner knowing of one's own consciousness. Transcendental consciousness is just a fancy name for pure consciousness. Consciousness without any thoughts or feelings or perceptions or objects. It's consciousness alone, consciousness aware of itself. The knower knows itself. And that's transcendental consciousness. And that's what we can experience in transcendental meditation. Very simple, easy technique. Settles the mind, takes you to that field of being. Field of being. Good point. Maharishi Vedic science is founded on a paradigm different than modern science. Where modern science is primarily, materialist based. It's a materialistic paradigm. But really, paradigms and science are two different things. Paradigms are metaphysics. Science is a methodology. So when we're talking about the paradigm of science, it's just what paradigm are scientists currently using. So they start with the materialist paradigm of everything's matter, and usually that, for most people, that matter is unconscious in its fundamental nature and its essential nature in and of itself. It's not until it becomes a complex form of information processing that consciousness emerges. That's a pretty popular view. But yeah, the idea that the world is not only mechanistic, but inner, fundamentally unconscious, and then consciousness emerges. So that would be the materialist paradigm of modern science, whereas Maharishi Vedic science starts with the assumption of a universal consciousness, that consciousness is actually primary. It's actually fundamental to the universe, like space-time. And there's an unbounded field of consciousness pervading the universe. Unbounded meaning it has no boundaries, it has no limits. It's completely formless, it's limitless, it's infinite in that sense. It's not bounded by space or time. It's prior to space-time and prior to matter. Matter is just a dense vibration of this consciousness. So it starts with that assumption, a universal, unbounded field of consciousness, or an ocean of consciousness. They like to use the analogy. And then we are each individual bubbles of experience, individual expressions of this universal consciousness, Maharishi termed being itself. And so Maharishi Vedic science is an investigation into the nature of being, into the nature of consciousness, because these are seen as the same thing. And it's empirical because the same way modern science looks to the outside world and says, let me verify this. You have a theory, let's verify it through observations. You can do the same thing. You can experience for yourself, in meditation, an unbounded field of pure silent consciousness. And this can be achieved through transcendental meditation, as they teach here, or any kind of meditation that takes you to the source, consciousness. Who am I? That's one of my favorite techniques, the who am I method of self-inquiry. But you can experience this pure consciousness in meditation, and then the more you cultivate that, the more that knowingness infuses into your waking state of consciousness. And the more that it becomes apparent that this consciousness underlies all experience. In fact, all experience is just a modification of its form. It's all just a manifestation of consciousness. So that's the paradigm of Maharishi Vedic science. And it uses the methodology of neuroscience and studying EEG and the brain, but then also experiential knowledge, knowing for yourself. Can this be verified through my direct experience? And that's what gives it its scientific character. And Vedic being from the Vedic tradition of meditation, Vedic tradition of philosophy and religion, which is a consciousness-based paradigm. You know, there's some dualist schools like Sankhya, there's Purusha and Prakriti, pure consciousness and dynamism and creation. And that's kind of ultimate duality. But then there's like Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual traditions that consciousness is all there is, really. So Maharishi Vedic science is important because we're at a paradigm shift right now in philosophy and science, the science of consciousness and the philosophy of consciousness. What is it? Does it emerge from brain activity? If so, how? And Maharishi Vedic science is bringing in a new, unique perspective, which is actually a very ancient perspective, the ancient Vedic tradition. But it's saying, no, consciousness is primary. Matter emerges from pure consciousness. And that's what I believe is true, from my experience at least. And the philosophers that I respect and admire, Rupert Spira, Donald Hoffman, Bernardo Kastrup, my all-time favorite. Then there's like Deepak Chopra. There's Galen Strawson, Philip Goff. The list goes on. There's way a lot of new philosophers now saying, oh yes, consciousness is fundamental. And I agree with their logic. And so I think Maharishi Vedic science is going to be a really good asset that we could use in founding a real, true science of consciousness. And until we acknowledge these other explanations, we're still going to be hitting at the wall of the hard problem of consciousness. Materialism can't explain it. It's a really hard problem for materialism. Why should the complex arrangement of matter yield subjective experience? No one has been able to come up with a way to answer that. Because in my opinion, that's actually begging the question. You're assuming that the brain creates consciousness. But in fact, if the brain just is consciousness, consciousness is the very substance of the brain, and most likely all matter. The most important thing to look out for is this coming summer of 2024, Dr. Tony Nader's book is coming out. Consciousness is All There Is. That's going to be the title. Dr. Nader is the president of the TM movement. He's successor to Maharishi. And this is going to be his masterpiece, his philosophical treatise. Consciousness is All There Is. And I'm really excited to read it. I cannot wait. So that has been a rundown of Maharishi Vedic science. And I am hoping to bring this unique perspective with me to academia, as I will be going on to New York University next year to study philosophical bioethics and the problems of consciousness and new technology. And so I think it's important to be aware, because there's a great awakening happening. There's a great frequency upgrade happening. We are elevating in our frequency. And I think a lot of people are awakening, and there's a whole paradigm shift accompanying this in science. You're seeing science and non-duality is taking off. Other organizations like that. So Consciousness is All There Is, Dr. Tony Nader, coming out this summer. Look for it. It's going to be the most up-to-date textbook on Maharishi Vedic science since all the way back to the 1960s when Maharishi's Science of Being came out. So thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.